Okay, so think about all the electronics you use. Like every single day, your phone, maybe smart gadgets at home, even the screen you're probably looking at right now. Ever wonder who actually builds them?
Yeah, a lot of the time it's these kind of unsung heroes, electronic manufacturing services companies, or EMS for short. And for this deep dive, we're really zeroing in on a super dynamic area, India's EMS sector. It's booming,
Yeah.
all our insights. They're coming straight from this detailed industry report called India EMS Sector Report 250626.pdf.
Right. And our mission really is to unpack what's going on there. We want to understand the massive growth opportunities that seem to be unfolding over multiple years. We'll look at the government policies helping drive the actual services these companies offer, which are getting pretty advanced, and also touch on exciting stuff happening in core components like PCBs and semiconductors. It's about understanding why this whole shift matters, really, why it matters to you, whether you're just using the tech, maybe thinking about investments, or just curious about how the global tech world is changing. And the report kicks off with this core prediction, which is frankly pretty mind-blowing. Electronic production in India expected to hit INR 27.7 trillion by FY28. That's a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of 27% between FY23 and FY28. I mean, think about that jump. It was INR 8.4 trillion in FY23. That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. How is India actually pulling this off? So, yeah, those are some incredible growth numbers, but what's behind it? What's the secret sauce, maybe? What makes India suddenly so attractive, particularly as an alternative to China for manufacturing electronics?
Well, the report points to a mix of things. You've got the demographics, which are obviously favorable, a huge pool of skilled labor that's relatively low cost. And then there's this concept of frugal engineering, which isn't just about being cheap.
Right, it's more like smart innovation on a budget.
Exactly. It's this unique Indian ability to innovate and deliver really high-quality stuff, but at a very competitive cost point. You combine that mindset with the sheer number of skilled people, well, it becomes a pretty disruptive force in global manufacturing. It's moving beyond just, oh, labor is cheap, to offering genuinely innovative, cost-effective solutions.
Okay, so India seems really well positioned, but the report does mention that the entry barriers in EMS aren't super high. So that usually means, intense competition. How are Indian companies managing to not just survive, but actually thrive? What are they doing differently? Maybe the less obvious things?
That's a really key point. To stay competitive, they need to be smart. The report highlights a few things. Having a really diverse customer base is crucial. Also, consistently increasing their wallet share, getting more business from the clients they already have, keeping costs lean, obviously, offering a wide range of products, and, crucially, adding value, offering more sophisticated services. They also tend to focus strategically on what's called the low-volume, high-mix, or LVHM market. So smaller batches, but highly customized products, often for business-to-business clients.
Oh, okay. So that probably means better margins and maybe less cutthroat competition than just mass-producing consumer stuff.
Precisely. It allows them to negotiate better terms and, yeah, face some less direct competition. And, when we talk about electronic manufacturing services, EMS, it's important to get that it's way more than just like snapping components together on an assembly line. Indian EMS firms now are really operating at a global standard. They offer this whole suite of services, starting right from product design, then prototyping, rigorous product testing, box assembly, even complex system integration. And they don't stop there. They handle repair and rework services too, the whole life cycle.
That's fascinating how much that role has evolved, right? It's not just contract manufacturing anymore. You're saying OEMs, the big brands, are actually outsourcing product design and development now.
Increasingly, yes.
And India's got an edge there in design, plus things like packaging, distribution, even sales and marketing.
Yeah, India has a real competitive advantage in design services. And you mentioned something interesting from the report earlier.
The after-sale service thing?
Exactly. That cultural aspect in India where, the use and throw idea just doesn't fly. Things are expected to last, to be repairable.
Right. So when these big OEMs trust Indian EMS firms with the actual design, what's the big capability leap that earned them that trust? It can't just be cost anymore.
No, absolutely not. The leap is their transformation into what the report calls strategic value creators. It's not just executing a plan someone else made. They're bringing their own design ideas, their engineering skills, their understanding of the market, including that cultural need for durability right to the table from the start. It makes them real partners in creating a better product, not just, a basic vendor filling an order.
Okay, this really connects to what the report calls the electronic megatrend in India. So, the total market size domestic production plus imports was already INR 10.8 trillion in FY23, and it's projected to just explode, right? A 21.5% CGR, hitting INR 28.8 trillion by FY28.
It's a huge number.
And think about the potential there. India's per capita electronic consumption is only what, USD 78 compared to the over 300 globally.
USD 324. Yeah. That gap, it just represents enormous room for growth. Huge potential demand just waiting to be met. And when you look closer at that demand, it's not just everything growing equally. Some sectors are seeing really explosive targeted growth. Mobile phones are still the biggest piece of the pie, sure. But you're seeing these incredible surges in IT, for instance, driven by all the digital infrastructure build-out.
Yeah.
And automotive electronics. That's a quiet revolution happening, especially with EVs.
Okay, give us some examples. What really stands out?
All right, so mobile phones. Still the largest segment, nearly half the EMS market in FY23, expected to rocket from INR 4 trillion then to almost INR 15 trillion by FY28. India is already the world's #2 manufacturing hub and market for phones.
Yeah.
And 5G rolling out is just pushing demand for higher-end smartphones even faster.
Makes sense. What else?
Consumer electronics and appliances.
Yeah.
Also strong growth projected. And look at the penetration rates. Room air conditioners, only about 9% of households have one. Refrigerators, maybe 33%. That tells you there's just massive headroom for growth, especially as you move into Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and rural areas.
Right, huge untapped markets there.
When the IT market, this one's booming, a 42.7% CAGR predicted. That's fueled by 5G, edge AI becoming a thing, and just massive investments in digital infrastructure across the board. Automotive, growing steadily, but the really interesting part is electric vehicles. EVs are still nascent, but the potential is huge. Get this, the electronic content in an EV four-wheeler, it's around INR 60,000 to 70,000. Compare that to a standard petrol or diesel car, maybe INR 5,000 to 6,000.
Wow, that's like 10 times more electronics per vehicle.
At least. It's a fundamental shift in where the value is in a car. Huge opportunity for electronics manufacturers. And one more, maybe railways. There's this big indigenous project called Kavach, a train collision avoidance system. It's very electronics heavy, designed for safety. The total expected spend on that is massive, around INR 340 billion. So another significant driver for domestic EMS.
Okay, those growth figures are really something. But all this complex electronics,
Yeah.
it relies on something fundamental, right? The printed circuit boards, the PCBs. The report calls them the backbone. And that market in India is also growing fast, projected 20.7% large AGR, hitting INR 680 billion by FY28. And most of that, over 98%, is for bare PCBs.
Absolutely. And manufacturing those bare PCBs in India has some major strategic pluses. First, vertical integration.
Meaning they control more of the process.
Exactly. Leads to lower costs, better efficiency, tighter quality control, and you can get products to market faster. It also helps foster innovation. When design teams and PCB manufacturing are closer, you get better collaboration, access to newer technologies, faster prototyping cycles.
And it helps the supply chain too, I guess. Less reliance on imports.
Definitely. Strengthens the whole supply chain, makes it more resilient, especially given, global uncertainties.
Right.
And ultimately, it gives customers a better deal, competitive prices, faster delivery, more customization options, all good things.
So from the backbone, the PCBs, we go even deeper to the absolute foundation, as the report puts it, for electronic self-reliance.
Yeah.
Semiconductors, the chips themselves.
Right. Globally, the semiconductor market is huge. USD 553 billion in 2023, heading towards maybe USD 736 billion by 2027. India's slice of that is smaller, obviously, but it's projected to grow much, much faster, like 19.5% CAGR. From USD 33 billion in FY23 up to potentially USD 80 billion by FY28.
What's driving that explosive growth in India specifically?
Well, it's things like 5G adoption, needing more advanced chips,
Yeah.
the general digitalization happening everywhere, but also those global supply chain issues and, frankly, geopolitical tensions. It's made everyone realize the need to diversify chip production away from just a few places. India sees a big opportunity there.
And India has this big ambition, right, to become a semiconductor talent hub, aiming for over 100,000 VLSI design engineers.
Yeah, VLSI, very large-scale integration. That's the complex chip design work. It's a highly specialized skill.
So is the government actually putting serious money behind this vision? Or is it just talk?
Oh, no, it's serious backing. There's the India Semiconductor Mission, the ISM. It's a USD 10 billion program. And the incentives are pretty generous, like a 50% subsidy from the central government, plus potentially another 20–25% from the state government where a plant is built.
Yeah.
That makes investing very attractive.
Okay, that's significant. And then there's this other acronym, OSAT, Outsourced Semiconductor Assembly and Test. You mentioned that's benefiting from the China Plus One trend.
Yes, exactly. OSAT is basically the packaging and testing part of chip manufacturing. It's maybe less complex than building the whole chip fab, but still crucial. And yes, as companies look to diversify their supply chains away from China, India is becoming a really attractive location for these OSAT facilities. The report sees that market hitting maybe USD 201 million by FY28, still nascent, but high potential.
And this isn't just planning, right? The report lists actual massive investments happening now under this Semicon India program.
Absolutely. This is where it gets tangible. You've got major players making huge commitments, like Tata Electronics partnering with PSMC to build a massive INR 910 billion fab in Gujarat. They're aiming for 3 billion chips a year for things like high-performance computing, EVs, defense.
910 billion rupees?
That's enormous. It is. And they're not alone. Kane Semicon is planning a big INR 33 billion unit, also in Gujarat. CG Power is setting up an OSAT facility with partners. Micron Technology, a big global player, is setting up an ATMP plant that's assembly, testing, monitoring, and packaging in Sanand, Gujarat, mostly for export. There are others too, like TSAT in Assam, another Tata venture.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, like you said. All these huge investments, they're part of this bigger picture, the Semicon India program. The goal isn't just factories, it's building a whole chip-to-product ecosystem in India. What does ecosystem actually mean in this context? How ambitious is that, really?
Oh, it's hugely ambitious.
Yeah.
An ecosystem means having the whole chain, right? From grinding the chips to fabricating them to assembling and testing them, and then crucially, having the industries right there in India that can use those chips in final products, phones, cars, medical devices, whatever. It's about building a self-reliant, resilient supply chain that captures value at every single step. From the raw silicon wafer all the way to the gadget you hold in your hand. It's the whole 9 yards. And this bigger vision, this ecosystem approach, it's driving what the report calls a structural transformation for the Indian EMS companies themselves. They're evolving, moving away from just being seen as the low-cost assembly guys. They're becoming these strategic value creators.
Offering integrated solutions like design, prototyping, even full original design manufacturing, ODM.
Exactly. ODM is where they design and manufacture the product for the client. That's a big step up in value creation.
Okay, let's talk about some of the specific companies mentioned in the report. 4 key players. Let's start with Surma SGS Technology. They specialize in PCB assembly, right? Across automotive, medical, consumer.
Yes, high growth areas.
What really jumps out is their customer base, over 280 clients, and no single one makes up more than 5% of their revenue. In a tough market, how much of an advantage is that diversification?
Oh, it's massive. Huge advantage. It means they aren't overly dependent on any one customer or any single industry sector. If there's a downturn in automotive, for example, they're cushioned by their business in medical or industrial. It provides stability, resilience. It also gives them, frankly, better negotiating power. Makes them a much more robust partner long term.
Makes sense. Okay, next is Scient DLM. They focus on really complex stuff, right? Safety-critical systems for aerospace, defense, railways, medical.
Highly regulated industries, yes. High complexity, high reliability needed.
And they recently bought a U.S. company, Altec Electronics. The report mentions this gives them global reach, more clients, but also access to the U.S. defense market through something called ITAR certification. What is ITAR, and why is it such a big deal?
ITAR stands for International Traffic in Arms Regulations. It's a U.S. government thing, basically controlling the export and import of defense-related articles and services. Getting ITAR certified is a huge deal because it means you're authorized to handle sensitive defense-related technology and data. It opens up the massive, lucrative, and otherwise inaccessible U.S. defense market.
So it's like a key that unlocks a very specific high-value door.
Exactly. It signals a very high level of trust, security, and capability, positions them for critical projects globally, not just in India.
Got it. Then there's Kane Technology, known for diverse services design, prototyping, manufacturing, big in automotive and industrial, especially complex systems. And they're moving into PCB manufacturing and OSAT themselves. That sounds like vertical integration.
It is a strategic move to control more of their supply chain, reduce dependencies.
Plus, they're involved in huge national projects, like the smart meter program and that Kavach railway safety system. How does mixing services, end markets, and these big government projects position Kane's?
It makes them incredibly versatile and resilient. They're tapping into multiple growth streams at once. The vertical integration gives them more control and potentially better margins. And being deeply involved in major national infrastructure rollouts like smart meters or kvetch, that means large, often long-term, stable contracts. It anchors their growth and makes them a pretty central player in India's whole digital transformation story.
Okay, and the last one mentioned is Avalon. Their focus is high margin, flexible volume manufacturing, long product life cycles. But the unique thing is their two-country manufacturing footprint, India and the US. Why is that so strategic?
That dual footprint is pretty clever. It lets them offer localized services, quicker response times, maybe even final assembly for their clients in North America using the U.S. facility. But they can still leverage the significant manufacturing cost advantages of their Indian operations for the bulk of the work. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
So, like local support backed by global cost efficiency.
Precisely. It's a smart way to offer agility and localized presence, which customers value, while still benefiting from cost arbitrage, optimizing for both service and cost in this global market. And looking forward, there are these big trends shaping the whole EMS industry, and India's right in the thick of them. First, emerging tech. IoT, sensors, 5G, AI, machine learning. It's all evolving so fast. That means product life cycles are getting shorter, and the electronics inside are getting way more advanced. EMS providers have to keep up. Second, automation and analytics in manufacturing itself. Using IoT sensors on the factory floor, using data analytics, automating processes. It's all about driving efficiency and productivity. And third, this big push towards localization of supply chains, partly driven by domestic demand growth in places like India, partly by companies wanting more resilience after recent disruptions. EMS firms are key to enabling that localization.
But it's not all smooth sailing, is it? The report highlights some significant challenges too, like enhancing local value addition. India still relies heavily on imports for critical stuff like ICs and advanced PCBs.
Yes, that's a major point. That reliance on imports creates cost disadvantages, especially with logistics, and limits how much value is truly added within India. It impacts overall competitiveness.
And linked to that is supply chain realignment, or the local supplier base for components just isn't fully developed yet.
Right. It's growing, but it's still limited compared to, say, China or Taiwan. Finding reliable, high-quality local sources for all the necessary components is a hurdle.
Which leads to the third challenge, local component sourcing. It sounds like the industry itself needs to take the lead in finding and developing local suppliers, setting quality standards.
Exactly. It requires proactive effort from the EMS companies and OEMs working together to build up that domestic component ecosystem. It won't happen automatically. And this really raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How effectively India navigates these challenges, building that component base, truly maturing its supply chain. That's going to define its path forward, and how successful it ultimately is in this global EMS race.
Wow, what an incredible journey through India's EMS sector. We've covered so much ground, it's undeniable. The growth potential is just immense. You've got this surge in domestic demand, strong government support, and this really interesting strategic shift by the companies themselves towards higher value integrated services. I think we definitely fulfilled our mission here, giving you that shortcut to being well informed about this really dynamic industry.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating space to watch. And maybe just to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Considering these ambitious targets, India is becoming not just a manufacturing hub, but a design hub too. How might the continued rise of its EMS sector really reshape things? Not just its own economy, but maybe fundamentally shift global supply chains, impact technological innovation over the next decade, perhaps creating new kinds of global interdependencies we haven't even thought about yet.
Unexpected interdependencies.
That's powerful stuff to consider. Definitely something for you to reflect on. Think about the broader implications of everything we've unpacked in this deep dive.